Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and I'd like to thank the Clerics for the opportunity to prepare this shiur and hopefully give it over properly. Okay, we are now in the time period known as sefira between Pesach and Shavuos, and as we know, we're counting the days and the weeks from the second day of Pesach until we hit Shavuos in Vav Sivan. Now, the source for this mitzvah is Min HaTorah. It's a parish pasuk in Parshas Emor. We learned a couple weeks ago. However, nowadays, the place can paskin is only going to be the Rabbanan for numerous reasons. Due to the fact, mostly because there's no Hakravas Ha'omer, the carbon that goes along with it. Unfortunately, we can't do nowadays. Beis Hamikdash, so the minyan is only going to be the Rabbanan. Now, the Shulchan Aruch, we have on page 1 in towards the end of Hilchos Pesach and Siman Tov Pei Tes in Sif Zayin, Paskins and tells us the halacha that if someone forgot to count at night with the bracha, as we know we count every night with the bracha, so you're allowed to count during the day, so to speak, to make up the counting. But when you count during the day, you do not make a bracha. You only count the days and the weeks, and you don't make a bracha. You just say the number. The Shulchan Aruch continues in Sif Ches and tells us the halacha that if someone forgot to completely count the whole night and the whole day, then he loses his opportunity to continue saying the counting with the bracha. I mean, even if he remembers the next night and he wants to count that night, he could count, but the Shulchan Aruch says now he's limited in his mitzvah in that he cannot count with a bracha, and he can only count the appropriate number of weeks and days, but he cannot make the bracha. However, the Shulchan Aruch concludes, if he's only misupik, if he's in doubt, meaning the next night he forgot, did I count last night, did I not count last night, and he's really being honest with himself, he's really in doubt, then he may continue to count with a bracha. Now we're going to accept this for now as halacha psuka, because the Shulchan Aruch quotes it without any machlokes. There's no two opinions here. There's no options. Truth be told, though, this is a big machlokes harishonim, and the Shulchan Aruch is siding one way, and he has the right to do that. But the Shulchan Aruch only gives us this option of saying if you miss a whole day, then you cannot continue to count with the bracha. You can only count the days and the weeks by itself without making the appropriate bracha. Now, this is a well-known halacha. Unfortunately, almost a lot of people, so everybody has some time in their life experienced this embarrassing part of Sefira Omer that you're at the end of Ma'ariv and you realize that last night, for whatever reason, you missed davening, or you missed davening with the shul, and you forgot to count Sefira, and here you are, you realize the whole day has passed, and you forgot to count the previous day, and now you have to go with your friend and say, Kibbutz Yimaitzmi in a bracha. This is a common scenario which plays itself out in many shuls all over the globe between Pesach and Shavuot. Approximately 12, 13 years ago, I was a young whippersnapper, Beis Medrash Bacher, and it was during Ben Azmanim break, Pesach, and I was sitting in a different Agudah shul in Brooklyn, learning with my Chavusa, his name was Abi Goldenberg. We're sitting and learning, and one of the Baal Batim who enjoyed, starting up with the Shiur Bacher, came over to us and said, "Oh, you guys, you're here from back Ben Azmanim, very nice to see you. So don't you know this halacha that you miss a day of Sefira Omer, you can't count with the bracha?" "Yeah, we know the halacha, thank you." "Well, can you give me any examples of any cases where if you would miss a day, the whole day you could still count with the bracha?" And at the time, both of us, myself and my Chavrusa, we didn't really, we never learned this, sugya properly, and we said, no, we don't really have any cases. And the guy, of course, was satisfied with himself that he is outsmarted these two brachas. So, now holding a couple years later, I'd like to suggest and seek out many different possibilities of this halacha, and we will try to, some of them, we will come out with definitive answers, some of them will be left hanging. Okay. So the Shulchan Aruch, in the same siman, but not on this page that we have in Sif Aleph, tells us the halacha is that there's a mitzvah incumbent upon each and every individual, like we said, to count the Sefira Omer. And the Mishnah Berurah explains over there in the beginning of the siman that the reason for this is the pasuk that we had laid a couple weeks ago in Parshas Emor, Uspartem Lochem. We should count for ourselves. There's a mitzvah for each and every individual to do a personal counting between these days of Pesach and Shavuot. As opposed to, for example, the mitzvah we had in this past week's Parshas Bahar, there's a mitzvah upon Bezdin to count the years of Yovel every year from, to count the years of the Shemitah cycle until ultimately get to Yovel. That's a mitzvah exclusively on Bezdin in Yerushalayim. This is a mitzvah incumbent upon each and every individual as a personal obligation to count the days of the Sefira. Now, although by many Birchas HaMitzvahs we have a principle called B'roiv Am Hadras Melech, that it is an honor to Hashem if we do his mitzvahs that are done together in a public fashion. That's why often by Kiddush or other mitzvahs we'll have one person do the bracha for everybody. That's B'roiv Am, because one person is doing the mitzvah. It's a way of honoring Hashem. One person doing it in a public fashion. By sefira ha'omer, since there's a specific commandment of lochem, we encourage, and the minig is that, and halacha is that every person makes his own individual bracha and counts for himself. Now, nonetheless, there is another principle in halacha called Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. All Yidden are guarantors, are responsible to help one another keep the mitzvahs properly. What this principle usually tells us is that it allows me to be most to you to help you fulfill your obligation in the mitzvah if you're having difficulty doing it. For example, you may have difficulty doing it. For example, by Kiddush. So we said before the example of one person, and the halacha of B'roiv Am tells us that one person should make Kiddush for everybody. Okay, but how do we know that he could be moitzi, he could help that person fulfill their obligation? Then the principle of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh kicks in, that I have a mitzvah upon myself to help guarantee that everybody keeps the mitzvahs properly, so I'm responsible for everybody to keep the mitzvahs properly. Therefore, I can make Kiddush, and I can be moitzi you, I can help fulfill your obligations. So we're trying to explain, just to speak out a little clearer, it's a deficient meaning. Let's say I already made Kiddush. So technically, how can I make Kiddush again for you? It's a done deal. But by you not having fulfilled your mitzvah properly yet, it's also a deficiency in me. There's something lacking in my kima mitzvah if there's another yid who has not yet been able to fulfill that mitzvah. That allows me to help you fulfill your obligation. However, there's a catch to this principle of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, that where each one of us as a guarantor. The Mishnah Rosh Hashanah tells us that Kol she'eino mechuyev b'davar eino yotzi esera midei chavosin. Anyone who's not obligated in that specific mitzvah cannot do it for somebody else. Therefore, the Mishnah delineates, for example, a cheresh, a deaf mute, a shota, someone who's mentally incompetent, or a katan, a minor, cannot fulfill the mitzvah for me. I'm a gadol. I have an obligation to either for me to do it by myself or someone else to help me do it. So someone who's not included in that parsha of the mitzvah, a cheresh, a shota, or a katan, for example, cannot help me fulfill my obligation of the mitzvah. That's all in regular cases. So now, seemingly, let's apply this to our halacha of sefira ha'omer. In a typical case of sefira ha'omer, the principle of arvus, of this Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, which a guarantor for another, should dictate to me that if for whatever reason I'm incapable of making a bracha, maybe I have laryngitis, maybe whatever the case is, I'm not feeling well, someone should be able to make the bracha for me, and I should be able to be yotzei with his bracha. That's a principle, like we just said, of arvus. He's the guarantor for my mitzvahs. I can be yotzei through listening to him make the bracha. Okay. However,
arvus is a shemei k'oida. I think arvus is something that even if he's not a bar kuba, but I am, then you'd be like, that I'm being yotzei the bracha. That's the regular shemei k'oida.
Okay, but let's just keep with arvus now, because it's working through arvus that the fact that I'm able to be moitzi the mitzvah through him. Let's say even in a case of Kiddush, not the Shemei Ka'ina, because let's say he already fulfilled, right?
In such a case, then you would employ arvus.
Okay.
If he has not yet fulfilled, it's working
okay. So let's tie this into our case now. So again, we have a case of a guy. The topic of discussion is a guy who unfortunately missed a whole day of sefira ha'omer. He just totally, blacked out. He missed the whole day. So now he cannot make a bracha anymore. Would this halacha of arvus, this halacha of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, that every person is a guarantor for one another, allow someone else to make a bracha for me? Again, sorry. This guy missed a whole day of sefira ha'omer. Let's use me as the example. I missed a whole day of sefira ha'omer. And you are still obligated in sefira ha'omer. So can I make a bracha for you? Because the principle of arvus, I'm a guarantor to make sure you have to keep your mitzvahs properly. For whatever reason, you're suffering right now from laryngitis. You can't make the bracha. I, unfortunately, missed a whole day. So do we allow the principle of arvus, that I'm a guarantor for you, kick in, and therefore I will be able to make a bracha for you? So would this be a case...
On which day is he making the bracha?
We're on the 22nd day of the Omer. I missed the 21st day of the Omer.
Oh, the 21st.
I missed the whole... yesterday. I'm gone. So I can't make a bracha myself
so we're
anymore.
Not talking about, in some way, the fact that he's making a bracha. He missed on the 21st.
Now we're on...
And he still didn't say on the 21st, but now he's going to say it, even though...
No, let's talk about now.
Even though I forgot,
no, the 21st is
he
over.
has me in mind and...
No, the 21st is over. The 21st passed. Now it's the 22nd day. So I messed up. I lost my bracha. You counted last night with the bracha. You were in good shape. But for that reason, tonight, you are not feeling up to making the bracha. So could I make... The same way I can make kiddush for you, so can I make the bracha for you even though I'm not obligated in the bracha right now? You're obligated in the bracha. I'm not. Could I make the bracha for you because I'm an arev, I'm a guarantor that you should keep this?
You're obligated in the bracha because you make it because you missed it.
So Rabbi Miller, you're suggesting that this pashut I should be able to make the bracha for you. Even though if I were by myself, I wouldn't be able to make the bracha. But because you're next to me, I can make the bracha. Okay, let's go through the case. So we have on page... Yeah?
Let's say someone didn't miss a day.
Okay.
And then they come with the bracha, and then they need to be, for whatever reason, they need to be with someone later. They can make the bracha, right?
Oh, okay, very good. That's another side. Okay, that's
But it says right here you can't.
Okay, that's
It
right.
says right here.
Very good. That's excellent.
So you can't do it for any other.
Right. So that is for sure talking about where I'm by myself at home. I forgot a whole day, so that I can't make another bracha. 100% correct. But here we have somebody else who's next to me, who is still obligated in the bracha. So would we apply this principle of arvus, that I'm a guarantor for him to help him, and he's still obligated in making the bracha?
I understand it, but yours doesn't seem kosher, depending on this.
Okay.
That you are not allowed to do it anymore for yourself. If you can't do it for you, you can't do it for others.
So what's the doctor suggesting?
The Shomea Kahona, you're doing it for yourself and for others.
Excellent. So he's suggesting that I became, so to speak, like a cherish. I'm like someone who's not obligated in this mitzvah anymore. Okay, so we're going to see that these two sides of the table that we have now, machlokes, is going to be a big machlokes in the Achronim. We're going to try to discuss each one, why they say their opinion. So on page 2 of the booklet, we have the Pri Chadash. The Chadash is one of the big early Achronim on the Shulchan Aruch. It was written by a Sephardi Rav, Chizkiah D. Loué, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce his last Sephardic name. What's fascinating about the Pri Chadash is that he emigrated to Eretz Yisrael in the late 1600s, and he unfortunately had a very short life. He was nifter at age 39, and in those short amount of years, he was a prolific author. He wrote on major pirushim on 3 halakhot of Shulchan Aruch plus others for him, and he is accepted as one of the big achronim, especially by the Sephardim. He was of Sephardic descent, and he had the following case. So we're going to discuss a lot of it was bracketed off, and we're going to go through a lot of the parts that were marked off on the sheet. He starts off by quoting a dayan, an anonymous dayan, a judge, that paskins in a case of what we're discussing, someone who missed an entire day of sefira Omer, although he himself, the guy who missed it, use me as the example, I missed the entire day of sefira Omer, although I cannot continue to count for bracha by myself, if I become the shliach tzibur, if I'm the chazan, if I'm leading the Ma'ariv service, then at the end of Ma'ariv, this dayan paskin that I can now make a bracha for the tzibur. That's what the dayan paskin, and the Pri Chadash is going to discuss whether or not he agrees or disagrees with the psak of this anonymous dayan, this judge. So at first, the Pri Chadash seems to agree, and he speaks how he likes this psak, he likes this ruling, and explains even for sure. He says like this: if there's someone in the congregation, if there's someone in the tzibur who is incapable of making his own brachas, he's an einoi baki, he's not able to make the brachas, then for sure that is the shpitz. That's the main purpose of having a shliach tzibur, to help other people with the brachas properly. And for sure the shliach tzibur would be able to make the bracha for him in the crowd and be mostly him with the bracha. So then the Pri Chadash says, even if the entire congregation is capable of reciting the bracha by themselves, everyone is literate, everyone has a good education, but he says we have other cases we see, for example, by the halacha of chazaras hashat. Nowadays we still do chazaras hashat, even though the reason why chazaras hashat was instituted was to help those people who are incapable of saying Shemona Esrei by themselves. Even though nowadays there is nobody in the congregation that's being yosei, that's fulfilling his obligation with the shliach tzibur, nonetheless we have a halacha that the shliach tzibur leads the service and says all the brachas, even though he's not being mighty anybody. It became sort of a ritual that the shliach tzibur says all these brachas, even though he's not technically fulfilling anyone's obligation. Says the Pri Chadash. So I would think to say, same thing by sefira Omer. Just like we have a halacha by chazaras hashat, the chazan can repeat the whole Shemona Esrei, even though he's not being mostly anybody, just because it's some quote unquote ritual that the guy standing up over there by the stender says all the brachas out loud. So too, even though I miss an entire day of sefira soimer, if I get up there and be the shliach tzibur, I should be able to say the bracha out loud as quote unquote the ritual of the service, and I won't be embarrassed anymore. I won't have to go around asking somebody else, excuse me, could you please make the bracha for me? I'll just make sure I become the chazan every night for Ma'ariv, and I'll save myself any embarrassment. That's what the Pri Chadash at first wants to suggest. He changes his mind. He doesn't like that. And he brings a raya that this can't be so from the following case. He quotes a Yerushalmi. Before he quotes Yerushalmi, basically the gang, the mahalach, the path that he's going to take on his attack on this halacha, on this sack of this dayan, is based on the principle we spoke about before, that kol she'ena mechuyev b'davar, whoever is not obligated in the matter, cannot fulfill someone else's obligation. And he's going to say this person who missed a whole day of sefira soimer is now, like Dr. Amundsen was suggesting before in reading of the Shulchan Aruch, he's not obligated anymore in the midst of sefira soimer. And he says, I have a similar case in the Yerushalmi in Masechtas Megillah. The Yerushalmi in Masechtas Megillah is discussing a case of Purim, is discussing the following case. You have, as we know, there's 2 days of Purim. There's Yudal, the 14th day of Adar, which is for us regular, we'll call him Ben Ir, the Gemara calls us, a regular city boy. You live in a regular city, either somewhere in Eretz Yisrael or in Chutz La'aretz, which do not have walls surrounding it for the times of Yeshua ben Nun. Or there's Purim on Tezvav, what we call Shushan Purim, for the Krachim, for those villages that had walls surrounded since the times of Yeshua ben Nun. And the most common example of that is Yerushalayim, the old city nowadays. Okay. So you have 2 Purims, 14th and 15th. Let's say you have a guy from a city boy, a Bnei Brak guy. He's a 14th Purim. He keeps Purim on the 14th day. And he decides, he enjoyed Purim so much, he wants to celebrate again. He wants to enjoy the party the next day. So he sleeps over the night after the 14th, the night of the 15th. He sleeps over some Bnei Brak. And the 15th day, he travels to Yerushalayim to join the festivities and celebrations. As he enters the city, he comes to a shul and he sees up to Megillah laning, and they say, "No, does anybody know how to read the Megillah?" And he says, "Well, I know how to read the Megillah. I laned it yesterday in Bnei Brak on the 14th." Is he allowed to lane the Megillah for those people in Yerushalayim on the 15th, but they're celebrating Purim on the 15th? But for him, it's not Purim. For him, it's just a day of fun and games. He had the mitzvah of Purim yesterday on the 14th. Is he allowed to lane the Megillah for them on the 15th or not? So the Yerushalmi says no. If he's not obligated today in Purim, again, his Purim was yesterday, the 14th, even though he's a nice Erlicha from Yiddish guy who knows to lane the Megillah, and he laned it yesterday, even on the 14th, since he is not obligated on the 15th day to lane the Megillah, he cannot be mighty, he cannot fulfill the obligation of the congregation, he cannot lane it for them. They'll have to find somebody who is a village boy, meaning who's someone who's celebrating Purim on that day, really, to lane the Megillah for them. That's the psak of Yerushalmi. Now, says the Pri Chadash, even though, he explains, he says, even though this guy, if he wanted to, very easily, very quickly, he could have made himself a guy who's celebrating Purim on the 15th day. All you have to do in order to celebrate Purim on the 15th day is sleep over that night, the night of the 14th going to the 15th, in that city, and you became like a resident for this halacha. It's very easy to change your status from a 14th to a 15th, and you can even technically have Purim chuyev on you for 2 days, according to many places. It's not so hard, but he didn't do that. So we see he's considered an Eino Mechuyev B'Davar. He's considered someone who's not obligated in the mitzvah, and he cannot lane the Megillah, he cannot read the Megillah for those people on the 15th. So at the Pri Chadash, I want to draw a parallel to this case, that since this guy missed a bracha of sefira soimer, the simple reading of the Shulchan Aruch is telling me, says the Pri Chadash, that he loses the mitzvah, like we pointed out before, and therefore, this person, even if he's a shliach tzibur from Ma'ariv in the shul, he should not make a bracha on sefira soimer. Someone else should do it because he's considered an eino mechuyev b'davar. He's not obligated anymore in the mitzvah. So what could he do? Says the Pri Chadash. The only thing he can do, like we know, the eitzah is that someone else, he can listen to somebody else make the bracha. Somebody else who is still mechuyev in sefira soimer in a full-fledged way, that he's still counting every day with the bracha. Let him listen to his friend's bracha, and then he can say the counting by himself, like the Shulchan Aruch said, you count every day without a bracha. And that's the outcome, that is the psak of the Pri Chadash. So again, let's summarize what we have so far. We have the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, which at face value tells us that if you miss a day, you have lost your opportunity to continue counting with the bracha. And the Shulchan Aruch says you continue counting only without a bracha, just mention the days and the weeks that we're up to. We spoke out that sefira soimer is a personal counting. It's different than the years of Yovel. There's a mitzvah comes on each person to do it by themselves. We spoke about the principle of arvus, of we guarantee, we have a halacha of kol yisrael reivim zelzel, we can guarantee we're supposed to guarantee the mitzvahs one to another, that would typically, in many cases of mitzvahs, obligate or allow me to make the bracha for you. We have the Pri Chadash quotes the psak of this dayan, this judge, who paskins that you should be able to apply that principle here, and therefore, if someone's a shliach tzibur, or if you have another case I didn't speak out before, if you have somebody specifically, like the case I was speaking out before with Rabbi Miller, if he is still obligated in the bracha, he was counting every day, and I missed a day, according to this dayan, it should be the same halacha. I could, even if I'm not the shliach tzibur, but if I'm his personal gabbai, I can count for him, I can make the bracha for him, and he could be yotzi through me. That would also come out. But the Pri Chadash rejects this with the Yerushalmi, the Raya of the Yerushalmi. Again, the case of the Yerushalmi was discussing the case of Hilchos Megillah, a case of reading the Megillah that a person is obligated on the 14th day, cannot learn the Megillah on the 15th day. Those two concludes the Pri Chadash. This will be the same thing. In this case, it will be considered an Einay Mechuyev V'Davar. Yes.
He missed the bracha. So you no longer make a bracha. Does that mean he's no longer a mitzvah for you?
Oh, excellent point. The Pri Chadash says yes. I would.
So if you're you don't even count.
Well, the Shulchan Aruch said you should count. If because
you don't think you should count without a bracha, but you should
right,
count
because
it's supposed to count.
Okay, because possibly because doesn't that's a good. I like that point, and it seems like the Pri Megadim in the middle we'll get to is going to raise that issue, but seemingly the Pri Chadash understands that the Shulchan Aruch is giving you like a good advice, maybe because there are other places, and truth be told, we'll get to that soon, that hold every night is separate mitzvah, and even if I miss a whole night, I can count every other night with a bracha. The Shulchan Aruch didn't pass him like that. But, so, therefore, it's a good advice to count the sefira, and you'll get maybe some type of quasi-mitzvah. I don't know exactly how to call it. But, seemingly, right, but without the bracha. But seemingly, the Pri Chadash understands, like we're emphasizing over here, that if I miss the bracha, I have lost the quote-unquote real mitzvah of sefira. And therefore, I'm considered an Einay Mechuyev V'Davar.
The one difference with the second example is with the sefira ha'omer, it's v'daber, and with the Megillah, it's lishmoa. So there seems to me a great difference. We're obligated to say the omer, but we're not obligated to say the Megillah, but to hear it. So I think the analogy I understand, but I think it falls through, because we're listening, that's our obligation. We can listen to a katan in the Megillah, but we have all we can. If it's a katan that's already in the chinuch, all right.
No, we don't pass him. That's so close you can. It has to be a chuyev v'davar.
Why not? He's a chuyev to Rabbanan Megillah. I'm a chuyev to Rabbanan.
Okay, no, okay, we don't do that.
All right.
Okay, okay. But we're going to see there's other issues with this case in a minute. So now on page 3 of the booklet we have the Pri Megadim. Pri Megadim, which is another classic commentator on the Shulchan Aruch. Pri Megadim's Yartzeit actually was yesterday, year 200 and something Yartzeit, I don't know exact count. Pri Megadim is a prolific author on Shulchan Aruch, and without him we probably would not have a lot of halachas we have today. He was a tremendous amkan. He just went down to the source of it, and he was able to focus and bring out many points that other poskim might have missed. I once read his Talmidim wrote about their Rebbe, the Pri Megadim, that he spent 20 years learning just Masechtas Chulin, which is the main Gemara which discusses a lot of the halachas of Yoreh De'ah. He spent 20 years learning Masechtas Chulin before he wrote his Kedushim on it. He was so focused on it, that's what gave him Siyat Yishmaya to be such a tremendous place. I also once in the Sefer writes, the reason why the Pri Megadim was Zeicha such Siyat Yishmaya, that he was Zeicha that we always cannot pass him like him, was because he writes his Torah in a derech anivus. He writes in a very humble fashion, and that's why he says, as opposed to other Torah, doesn't say who, that a lot of times we don't pass him like with them because they wrote in a way of gaiva. Pri Megadim was a tremendous anav and a tremendous book. Okay, so the Pri Megadim on page 3, he quotes first the Pri Chadash, and he seems to just quotes it and seems to, at first glance, agree with the stock of the Pri Chadash, the outcome that you should not be able to be mosi somebody else if you yourself cannot make a bracha. However, the second part of Pri Megadim, where the second set of brackets is on the page, he takes a curve. He changes course. He says it's hard to compare the case of Megillah to the case of Sefiras Omer. Basically, he's saying the claim that I Florence brought up before. The case of Purim, when you have the guy, the Krochim, the people who are celebrating Purim on the 15th day, Yerushalayim, the person who's coming there from the 14th, the guy who's coming from Bnei Brak to Ben Ir, he has absolutely no chiyuvim of Purim on that day. Purim, and for him, was on 14th exclusively. The 15th day, the only halacha that's forget to him is that he doesn't say Tachanun. Otherwise, I know has Seder. Otherwise, Purim is not celebrated for him because he's totally not obligated in the Yechiyah because he's a Ben Ir, he's not a Ben Krach, he comes from the city, not from the villages. However, says the Pri Megadim, in the case of sefira Omer, although you lose your opportunity to count with the bracha if you miss a day, but like our Florence said, you still are fully obligated in the mitzvah. Just unfortunately, part of the mitzvah is to mimos. It has to be complete 7 whole weeks you have to count. Unfortunately, you missed a day. So your weeks are not going to be complete. Your weeks are not going to be whole because you have a hole in the middle of your counting. But that doesn't take away from your mitzvah. The mitzvah still continues every day. So says the Pri Megadim, I argue on this comparison of the pre-Chadash Shmei to the case of Purim, and therefore it sounds like from the Pri Megadim, he doesn't write this clearly, it sounds like he would argue on the fact of the pre-Chadash. It sounds like the Pri Megadim would agree that somebody, with the dayan of the pre-Chadash, with the Rav that the pre-Chadash started off quoting, that somebody else could yes make a bracha for, meaning I, who missed the day of Sefira Omer, I should be able to make a bracha for somebody else, who is still chayiv in the mitzvah of Sefira Omer. However, the Pri Megadim does not write that clearly, so it's hard for me to say, with 100% clarity that that's what he holds, but he argues on the right of the Pri Chadash that leads me to believe he would also argue on the psak. He has other suggestions. We're going to cut them out for now. At the end of the day, he says the best thing you can do either is like what the Pri Chadash said, to listen to somebody else who's still for sure obligated in the bracha, and then say amen to that bracha and then count. Or he says another interesting chap. He says another piece of advice. If you are a father and you have a child who's magiya l'chinuch, he's a katan magiya l'chinuch, meaning he's above the age of 7 or 8, somewhere between 7, 8, and 13, so he's developing some maturity in his intellect, and he's what's called a katan that's magiya l'chinuch. The obligation of the father is to train him in brachos. You have to train him. That's the obligation of chinuch. So much so that when a father trains his child to make a bracha, he's allowed to say the bracha with him, word for word, and say Hashem's name. That's not a problem of bracha levatala. That's not saying a bracha in vain. We have an obligation to train our children. We have an obligation to teach them the correct way to say the bracha. Says the Pri Megadim, I have a way to save face. If a guy feels that he's too embarrassed to ask his friend to make the bracha for him, if he has a child who's of the age of magiya l'chinuch, let's say a 9, 10-year-old boy, you go over to him and say, Yankel Shmerel, did you count Sefira Omer tonight? No, not yet, Tati. Okay, let's count. I'm going to teach you how to say the bracha. Repeat after me. Baruch, Baruch, Hashem, say Hashem's name, okay? Hashem, and therefore you have said the bracha. So although maybe it's not a classical case of saying the bracha on Sefira Omer, but it's kind of like a feel-good. If you want to be able to feel good and still make the bracha, says the Pri Megadim, I'm giving you a happy piece of advice, a way to kind of,
Assuming the cousin doesn't know the bracha himself, he has to be at an age where he can't, could be less than 9 or 10. 9 or 10.
No, because if he's less than 9 and 10, let's say 5, there's a certain amount of gray area where it's not sure what the status is. So let's say a 5-year-old kid. So it's a shaila if you're, fully allowed to say the whole bracha with him if he's totally not obligated in it. But here is magiya l'chinuch, he's magiya to the mitzvah.
It's dinner for the child able to do mitzvah. So 5-year-old also doesn't make a bracha.
Okay, then that might be a debatable part. Okay, that's the Pri Megadim's advice. Now, up until this point, we were discussing part of the expression a regular Joe. A regular guy who misses a day. We're discussing, I'll use myself as an example, we miss a day of Sefira Omer. Would we say the halacha would change if we're dealing with a different person? If we're dealing with a Rav or a Rebbe, who we know the minig in Klal Yisrael in many places, many kehillos, is that although there's a shliach tzibur, there's a chazan who davens ma'ariv kedamid, he does not make the bracha for Sefira out loud. You have the Rav or the Rebbe who says the bracha out loud in a lot of Chassidish places with a whole special tune, and everyone listens very carefully, and he counts Sefira first, and then everyone, the rest of the congregation, says Sefira afterwards. What would happen if Chas v'Sholom, the Marid Aso, the Rav, who was sick, whatever the case was, he missed the day of Sefira, and now the next night he's back in shul for Ma'ariv, and he chaps, and he missed the whole night before? Would the halacha change for him? Is there any way to? It's a big embarrassment. Here he is. The shul was packed, thousands of people came to hear the Rebbe say the special nusach, the special tune for Sefira Omer, and he's not going to be able to do it. So do we say, is there a little wiggle room to say that out the bushach, to cover that tzibur, could we allow the Rav to say the bracha even though he missed the whole day? Okay? So the Sefer Mikroi Kodesh, which was written by Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, who was the Rav in Yerushalayim in the early 1900s, he quotes that this once happened to the Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi was Rav Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik was the father of Rav Chaim Brisker, father of the Soloveitchik dynasty, the Rav of Brisk, and he was a Brisker. And unfortunately, one time, whatever the case was, he missed a day of Sefira, And what he did was, says the Mikari Kodesh, of Pesach Frank says, what the Beis Halevi did was that he was a Shliach Tzibur from Ma'ariv, and he had one of his dedicated Balabatim, who was still counting with the bracha, stand next to him, and he was being moitzi his Balabas with a bracha, meaning, like we spoke about before, that if I miss the day, I have somebody next to me who is still obligated to count with a bracha, I can make the bracha for him. Now again, if I would make the bracha for him, so that night, he's not going to be able to make his own bracha anymore, because I already made, he said Amen, and he was yod to the bracha. So the Beis Halevi, I don't know if it was the president of the shul, whoever it was, he had a real dedicated Balabas who was willing to give up his bracha for the Rav, and the Beis Halevi made the bracha out loud, and this Balabas said Amen like everybody else, and then he discounted and didn't make his own bracha. So the Mikari Kodesh of Pesach Frank brings down, this is what the Beis Halevi did. And so we see that the Beis Halevi paskins like this dayan of the Pri Chadash, and seem like the Pri Megadim paskins also, that the regular din of Arvus, the regular din of I'm a guarantor, so everyone's mitzvahs allowed him, even though he wasn't obligated in the bracha anymore because he missed the whole day, allowed him to make the bracha for a member of the congregation. Now I want to digress for a minute because I want to share a fascinating story which I spoke to my father on Friday, and he reminded me of this story, and it's a little bit off topic, but I really think it's kedai because it's such a geshmaka listish story. The Beis Halevi, like I said, was the Rav in Bris. I'm trying to say it quickly because I'll have to get to other points. And the Teretz Mima, who was a Pirish on Chumash, his name Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, was the son of the Aruch HaShulchan. Okay, he was a prolific author also, and he wrote, besides the Svarim he has on Chumash and other Svarim, he wrote a multiple volume set called Makar Baruch, which was his personal diary of the many stories that happened to him when he was the son of the Aruch HaShulchan. He was a nephew of the Nesiv. He spent many years in Volozhin. He was surrounded his whole life by many Gedolim, and he has many fascinating stories that are only found there because they happened to him. He writes the following story. The Teretz writes this story. He was traveling home. He was in Volozhin Yeshiva in the late 1800s. He was traveling home to Nevarek. From Volozhin to Nevarek, I don't know exactly the route, but he was traveling home, and his train took a overnight stop in Minsk. And he wasn't prepared to stop overnight. He writes he had no money on him, or very little money on him, because he wasn't prepared. He was a very budgeted person, and later in his life he became a banker. He was very good at budgeting himself. And he said he really didn't have any money on him, so he asked the local, when he got off the train, where's a very cheap hotel. Anyway, he shows up in this real dive of a hotel, and he describes in his diary the living conditions in the room that they gave him, especially when they saw him show up at the 4 yeshiva bucket with his little satchel. They gave him the worst of the worst rooms. He really describes it as a really decrepit situation. Anyway, he's in this room, he's really getting homesick because, this is his comfortable, compared to what he had in yeshiva, this was really bad. And he's looking forward to going home the next day. He's stuck in Minsk overnight, but he can't even, he said he tried to lay down the mattress. It was so uncomfortable, he didn't know what he was going to do. And all of a sudden he hears in the lobby, and he probably had very thin walls in this type of hotel, and he hears like a big commotion going on in the lobby. He goes out, and he sees the Beis Halevi, who was the Rav in that time, I think it's Fluk, had come to this hotel. So he was also stuck in Minsk overnight and needed a place to stay. And the hotel keeper was up in arms because the rooms were all booked. For some reason, this hotel, even though the condition that it was, all the rooms were booked. And he didn't want to turn away the Beis Halevi. He wanted the Gedolei Hadar, the Rav. So he's not sure what to do. So Beis Halevi says, let me see the guest list. Maybe I know some of the people that are in the hotel. Maybe I can bunk with one of the people. I don't mind. I'll share a room with somebody. Anyway, to get to the point, he sees the name of this Bacha Baruch Halevi Epstein. He figures out who he is, the Shulchan's son. And his nephew says, I see the Bacha from Volozhin. I can room with him. I'm going to go knock on his door and see if we can share the room for tonight. He knocks on the door. Tarsim almost faints. In fact, the Beis Halevi is by his door. Of course, he invites the Beis Halevi in with Gedolei Hadar, and okay, they share the room for the night. But of course, once the Beis Halevi comes to town, a lot of people heard that he came to town, and next thing you know, people are knocking on the door, coming to visit, get brachas, ask shilas. The room turned into a beehive of activity, and I don't know, it sounds like nobody slept that night. Okay, but he was very excited because now he has the Beis Halevi in his room, and he writes a whole chapter in his diary about all the stories that happened that night. Let's get to the point. Anyway, a guy comes into the room, one of the maskilim, one of the enlightened people of the town of Minsk, who was one of the chief librarians in the town of Minsk, and he's just discussing, he opened up a conversation with the Beis Halevi, and he told the Beis Halevi, we have your Sefira in our library in Minsk, and we're a little disappointed at you, because you're such a great tzaddik, you're such a great go'in, you're a genius, and we expected in your Sefira that you should be able to find kulas. You should be able to find leniencies that the other Rabbanim can't find. You are such a walking encyclopedia. We expected in your Sefira to get some really good leniencies in halacha that we can't find anywhere else. The Beis Halevi says, what? You looked through my Sefira, didn't find kulas? I have many, many kulas in my Sefira. The guy's like, really? Well, I don't know. We didn't see any. He's like, well, I'll tell you like this. When you have like a traveling salesman, he has merchandise with him. He doesn't bring everything with him. He just brings some of his wares, and you get an idea of what his merchandise is like. And if you like his stuff, he can bring you more things from his main supplier. So I'll tell you, I'm going to lay down the table for you 7 coolers that I can tell you off the bat, and you'll understand my type of coolers, and you'll see that I'm really a big maker. The guy's very excited. It's not skill. He's very excited. And the Beis Levi says like this. Number one, he says, the Beis Levi says there are many people that are machmir, that they only daven Mayer through Chatzos halayil. They hold after Chatzos at night, you're not daven Mayer anymore. You missed the opportunity. Says the Beis Levi, I'm makel. I have a way of proving that you can daven Mayer till Lois HaShachar. Number one. Number two, he says, the Shulchan Aruch says, the only people that are muchzik b'chasidus, that are steeped in piety, can wear tefillin the Rabbeinu Tam. Special extra pair of tefillin. I hold the Beis Levi said, I'm makel. Anybody who wants to wear tefillin the Rabbeinu Tam. The third kula, he says, is that some people are machmir, they will not say extra piyutim during Shmoneh Esrei. They won't put extra things in to say during Shmoneh Esrei, I'm makel. You can put extra things in Shmoneh Esrei. The fourth kula, he said, is that some people are machmir, the Shulchan Aruch brings down to be machmir, when Erev Tishba falls out on Shabbos, that after Chatzos on Shabbos, you're not allowed to learn regular things anymore, you're only allowed to learn things which are sad, I'm makel. You can learn regular Divrei Torah also. The fifth thing he said is that some people are machmir, not to fast on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a big yontif, you can't fast, I'm makel. If you want to fast on Rosh Hashanah, you can fast. The sixth kula, he says, is that some people are machmir on Yom Kippur, and they say, you're not allowed to make a steak of Yom Kippur, you're only allowed to keep 1 day, you're not allowed to keep 2 days Yom Kippur, I'm makel. You want to have 2 days Yom Kippur because steak of Yom, you can have 2 days of Yom Kippur. The seventh kula I have for you is, he says, is that the Shulchan Aruch paskins by sefira to omer. If you miss the whole day, you can't count anymore with a bracha, I'm makel. You can still count with a bracha. Obviously, the master got the point, and he packed his bags and left. And everyone in the room was a big tumult. He writes, everyone was so excited. They slavely showed off his guidance, stuff like that, off the cuff. Okay, great story. Now, in Yiddish, there's an expression, you can't ask a kasha on a mic. You can't ask a question on a story. But I think this is a Listischer story, not a Chassidish story. You have a right to ask a question. What does Beis Levi mean? What does Beis Levi mean when he said that you can count 3 without a bracha? So there's a whole discussion, Beis Levi. I know you can count with the bracha. Right? Even if you miss the whole day even though you missed the whole day of 3, you can still count with the bracha. Now there is a whole sheet of Beis Levi, which I didn't prepare to speak about because I knew it would be for sure make us over time. And he learns the 2 separate mitzvahs, counting weeks and counting days. Put that aside, because that's one way to explain the story. The other way to explain the story is what we just said from Pesach Frank. The Beis Levi holds that I can be, if I miss the whole day with the bracha, I can go ahead and make a bracha for somebody else who still is mechuyev in a bracha. And Beis Levi himself did that according to our Pesach Frank. He brings the story that happened. So that is one shot in the story of the Beis Levi. Now let's get back to regular schedule programming. So we have like this. We have what happens to a Rav who missed the day of Sefira. So option number 1 is that you can find someone in the congregation that still is obligated in the bracha and make the bracha for him. Comes along the Shteven Halevi Shlita, Rav Wozner, big tremendous Pesach in Bnei Brak. He's already over 100 years old. He writes the following thing. He writes, it's such a busha, a Rav, a big shul, who's it doesn't matter a Rebbe, but it seems like that's what he's implying, that the shul looks to him to make the bracha out loud in a special way. If he's not going to make the bracha, it's not covered as tzibur. It's not honorable for the congregation that the Rav shouldn't be able to make the bracha. And he says, I'm going to permit the Rav to make a bracha even though he missed the whole other day because covered as tzibur. It's a lack of honor, dignity for the tzibur. Where am I coming from? I can't just make this up. He says I'm going to draw a parallel. Rav Wozner draws a parallel to halacha and hilchos tefillah. Halacha is, by davening, we're all familiar with that. If someone feels the urge to relieve himself, he needs to go to the bathroom during davening, not allowed to daven. It's an avera. The Shulchan Aruch says, if you do so, and you daven when you feel the urge to relieve yourself, your tefillah is a to'eva, it's an abomination. And you have to go ahead and re-daven. However, if you feel, the Shulchan Aruch writes, that b'diavad you daven, and you feel you were able to hold yourself in for another 72 minutes, so b'diavad, your tefillah was good. Again, lechat tefillah, you cannot do that. And if you did it, and you felt you went right away to the bathroom afterwards, you have to daven again. If you did it, and you realize you're still able to hold yourself in for 72 minutes, says the Shulchan Aruch, but the evidence tefillah is good. Says the Bir Halacha, writes the Mishnah Berurah, that if you're a shliach tzibur, if you're the chazan for the shul, and right before we saw Chazaras HaShatz, you feel the urge and you have to go relieve yourself, if you feel that you're able to wait 72 minutes, then lechatchila you're allowed to continue and say Chazaras HaShatz. You don't have to walk out of the shul and leave the tzibur hanging because that's covered at tzibur. So what's the Bir Halacha saying? That in a case where it's covered at tzibur, we allow you to rely on a b'diavad and make a lechatchila. Because the b'diavad is for everybody. If b'diavad, if you already did it, and you're able to hold yourself in for 72 minutes, tefillah was yotze. You're okay. Here, you're shliach tzibur. We say lechatchila. Stay there Don't have to go. You don't have to leave your post. You can stay there and daven lechatchila. Says Rav Osner, I want to draw a parallel and say over here also this Rav, it's covered at Tzibor. He's allowed to rely on the b'diavad of the Rishonim. There are shittas of Rishonim that hold that each and every day is an independent mitzvah. Since there are those opinions, even though Shulchan Aruch does not pass them, doesn't bring them, I hold that you can draw a parallel and say you can rely on those opinions b'diavad and the Rav can make the bracha. That's the psak of Rav Osner. Comes along Rav Asher Weiss Lisa. Rav Asher Weiss is a tremendous, much younger than Rav Osner, but a tremendous gaon. He lives in Yerushalayim also, originally born in America, Chassidish Rav. And he says, I have a hard time being soivel, I have a hard time agreeing with this shave of the lady. Because first of all, the parallel to the case of a person who needs to relieve himself is a very weak parallel. He says, because over there, we have a Shulchan Aruch which already set up for us, is a lechatchila and b'diavad for everybody. So we say, the lechatchila is, you're not allowed to, you can't daven. But yeah, if you're able to hold yourself in for 72 minutes, it's okay, b'diavad. The Shulchan Aruch already gave us that formula of lechatchila and b'diavad. And therefore we say, when the shliach tzibor, in the case of the covenant tzibor, we make the b'diavad lechatchila. But all that formula, all those variables are already found in Shulchan Aruch. In Hilchos Sefira Omer, there's no variable. The Shulchan Aruch only passed in one way. He didn't say a lechatchila and b'diavad situation. It's true there are other Rishonim who hold that each and every day is an independent mitzvah, and they're valid opinions. But the Shulchan Aruch, who's our posek, doesn't give two options. He gives only one option. And therefore, Rav Asher Weiss paskin that you cannot rely on this sak halacha l'maisa, and he is very hesitant to allow a Rav to make a bracha just for the kavrat tzibur. He says, I'll bring you a chassidish maisa to prove it. And I like this maisa very much because it's about on my mother's side, my maternal grandfather, the Ben Achaben, from the Pinchas Mikaret. The Pinchas Mikaret was a big Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, and the following story happened with him. I looked this up. Rav Asher Weiss quotes only half the story. I looked up the whole story in the Sefer. It happened twice in his life that he was humiliated, quote unquote, in a public fashion in front of Hasidim, and he writes he was samach simcha gedol. He was very happy that he was able to bring himself to such a humbling experience. What were the two experiences that were so humbling for him? One time during Hashanah on Sukkot, when everyone's walking around, the Rebbe, of course, has the schus of leading the congregation, and he's going to say the Hashanah out loud, and everyone repeats after him like the Chazan does. One time, Pinchas Mikaret was leading the Hashanah, and he started saying the wrong thing. Then everyone said, no, right? Because he started saying the wrong Hashanah. Every day, a specific paragraph to say. He started saying the wrong paragraph. He felt that was such a humbling experience for him. He was so happy that he had the opportunity to be humbled in front of the eyes of the congregation. Story one. Story two, he writes, is that one time, for whatever reason, he missed the whole day of Sefira Omer. And he couldn't count with the bracha anymore. And he was samach simcha gedayla that now he's not going to be able to count with the bracha in front of his whole his whole shul, and people are going to know that the Rebbe missed the day. It's very embarrassing. But he's very happy because he's going to be able to teach everybody that he's also a human being. He also, whatever reason, he missed the day of Sefira Omer. He's going to keep the halacha mufareshes and he's going to keep the halacha mufareshes and Shulchan Aruch that he can't count anymore with the bracha, and it's a learning experience. Now the whole congregation will know that it's okay to be human. And therefore, Rav Asher Weiss concludes, he was writing this true to a Rav. He says, he suggests to go to Pinchas Mikaret and stick to your gun, stick to Shulchan Aruch, and explain to the Baal Batim that there's halacha in Shulchan Aruch, and hopefully it'll bring a covenant to Tiferes for everybody. So just to sum up what we spoke about so far, because we're out of time, again, we start off with the halacha of what's going to be if you forgot a day of Sefira Omer. We say halacha mufaresh in Shulchan Aruch is that you lose the opportunity for a bracha. What are some possibilities how we can dray around and still make a bracha even though you missed the whole day? So we spoke out the dayan of the Pri Chadash. The dayan of the Pri Chadash said, "Al arvus, you can still be mighty even though you yourself can't make the bracha. You yourself can still be mighty somebody else who's still mechuyev in the bracha." The Pri Chadash took issue with that because of the halacha by Megillah of a Yudala cannot be mighty a tesvavnik. The Pri Megadim seem to argues on that raya, but he seems hesitant to pass in hedja against the Pri Chadash. And therefore he suggests the katan shtickle, right, being machanach the child. We have the Shevet HaLevi's sack of a Rav is allowed, of Kavrat Tzibor is allowed to do it. We have the Beis HaLevi who followed the sack of the Dayan of the Pri Chadash. I just wanted to speak out that Shmuel Kamenetsky, Shlita, and Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also passed like that. That a chazan or a Rav, if he wanted to make a bracha, could find somebody in the congregation who's still obligated the bracha and make the bracha for them. However, Rav Shach Zatzal and Avi Ezri, I think Rav Siroko is not here, but let me means Avi Ezri is able to go through inside. He goes barichas a lot of riots to prove the Pri Chadash is right and holds that you cannot be moitzi. So we have bring it down. We have an earlier machlokes achronim. We have a contemporary machlokes achronim also. How to pass in the Maisa. We have the advice of Asher Weiss. If you're a Rav in such a situation, just to swallow it, and I didn't speak out of Moshe. I didn't speak out of Moshe. I didn't speak out. Okay. Right. Okay. So we have, and the Nitya Gabriel also passed like that, like we were saying from Moshe and we're saying from Sheva Levi, but and thank you everyone for coming, and have a great day.
Good.
I can